3 years. That's how long my daughter hadn't spoken to me. Then one morning, a letter arrived in my mailbox. My hand shook as I held it. Her handwriting was unmistakable. But when I looked closer, I realized this wasn't the reunion I had been praying for. It was something far darker. It had been 3 years since I last heard my daughter Emily's voice. 3 years of unanswered calls, unopened letters, and ignored holidays. 3 years of silence that cut deeper than any knife. As a mother, there's no pain like the pain of being erased from your own child's life. I used to replay our last argument in my head, wondering if there was something I could have said differently. Maybe if I hadn't raised my voice, maybe if I had been gentler, maybe she would still be here. Emily had always been my pride and joy. I raised her as a single mother after her father walked out when she was just 5. We weren't rich, but I worked double shift at the diner and later cleaned houses just to keep food on the table and save for her college tuition. I thought we were close. I thought she understood the sacrifices I made. But when she turned 21, something shifted. She fell in with a crowd I didn't trust. People who made empty promises and filled her head with the idea that family was nothing but a chain holding her down. Our arguments grew sharper, and then one night, she screamed that she never wanted to see me again. That was the last time I saw her, slamming the door, leaving me in the kitchen with her untouched dinner on the table. The silence that followed was suffocating. Birthdays came and went. Holidays turned into quiet dinners for one. Every time the phone rang, I jumped, hoping it was her. It never was. I wrote her letters, short, simple, telling her I loved her and that the door was always open. They were never answered. Neighbors told me to move on, but how could a mother move on from her child? Then, one gray Tuesday morning, I found a letter in my mailbox. The return address stopped me in my tracks. Emily. My heart pounded as I clutched the envelope. The familiar curve of her handwriting instantly recognizable. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I held it to my chest, tears streaming down my cheeks, whispering her name as if she might hear me. After all this time, had she finally decided to come back to me? I carried the letter inside and sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she once did her homework, and we shared late-night talks over cocoa. My hand shook as I slid a knife carefully under the seal. For a moment, I didn't even breathe. This was it, the reunion I had prayed for. But as soon as I unfolded the paper, something felt wrong. The words weren't warm or apologetic. They weren't even personal. It wasn't a letter written from a daughter to her mother. It was something else, formal, detached, and cold. My eyes scanned the first lines, and my stomach dropped. Emily hadn't written to reconnect. She hadn't written to apologize or explain. The letter was about money, my money. She claimed she was in trouble, that she needed thousands of dollars fast, and she expected me to send it without question. But even as I read, another thought gnawed at me. The phrasing was off, too polished, too rehearsed. And then it hit me. The handwriting wasn't entirely hers. The loops and slants were similar, but there was something different about it, as if someone had tried to copy her style. My heart sank. Was this really from Emily? Or was someone else pretending to be my daughter? I stared at the letter, torn between hope and dread. Either way, one thing was certain. After 3 long years of silence, my life was about to change. I sat at the kitchen table for what felt like hours, staring at the letter. The ink blurred as tears welled in my eyes. Part of me wanted to cling to hope that maybe Emily had matured, that she simply needed help, and this was her way of reaching out. But another part of me, the part that had known her handwriting since the day she scribbled her first crayon drawings, whispered that something wasn't right. The first paragraph was too formal. Emily had never written me like that. She was fiery, emotional, and passionate, never cold or businesslike. Yet the letter sounded like it had been drafted by someone else entirely. The mention of money made me recoil. My Emily had never asked me for more than a few dollars for gas or coffee. She knew how hard I worked and would rather struggle than burden me. But then doubt crept in. Had 3 years changed her? Maybe life had hardened her. Maybe she was desperate. Still the handwriting. I leaned closer, pulling out an old shoebox where I had saved some of her childhood letters, birthday cards, and notes from college. I spread them across the table, comparing each loop and stroke. My heart raced as I realized I wasn't imagining things. The spacing was off. The E in Emily's signature always had a flourish. Here it was stiff forced. Whoever wrote this letter was either trying too hard or didn't know her well enough to copy her handwriting properly. A shiver ran through me. If this wasn't Emily, then who had sent it? And why would they pretend to be her? I tucked the letter back into the envelope and paced the room. Memories of our last fight haunted me. Her shouting that I was too controlling, that she wanted freedom, that she didn't need me. If she truly meant it, then maybe this letter wasn't her at all. But if it was, what kind of trouble had she gotten into to reach out after all this time? I decided to test the waters before reacting. That evening, I called the number listed at the bottom of the letter. It was written in neat block print, not cursive. My pulse pounded as I dialed. The phone rang twice before a man's voice answered. Not Emily's. "Hello," he said gruffly. My breath caught. I'm looking for Emily," I stammered. There was a pause, a faint shuffle, and then the man said, "She's not here right now, but she told me to handle things. Did you read the letter?" His tone was clipped, impatient, businesslike. My chest tightened. "Who are you?" I demanded. "I'm a friend," he replied quickly. "Emily asked me to pass along the message. She needs the money right away." Something inside me hardened. My instinct screamed that this was wrong. Emily would never send a stranger to speak for her, not to me. Her mother. I pressed further. If Emily really wrote this, then tell me, what's her middle name? The man hesitated. Look, ma'am, I don't have time for games. She said you'd help. She needs this. Don't you want to see her again? And with that, he hung up. The silence on the line sent chills down my spine. My doubt solidified into suspicion. This wasn't Emily. Someone was trying to manipulate me. But then, where was my daughter? I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake replaying the man's voice, his impatience, his evasiveness. My heart ached with fear. Had Emily fallen into something dangerous? Was she being used? Or worse, was someone pretending she was alive, and well, when she wasn't? By morning, I knew I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed my keys, tucked the letter into my purse, and drove to the police station. The officer at the front desk listened carefully as I explained, showing him the letter and recounting the strange phone call. He frowned as he studied the envelope. "You did the right thing," he said. "This could be a scam. Happens more often than you'd think." But when I whispered, "What if my daughter really is in trouble?" his expression softened. He promised to look into the return address and phone number. Still, I left with more questions than answers. Walking back to my car, I realized one thing. No matter how much fear gripped me, I couldn't sit back anymore. If this letter was the first sign of Emily after 3 long years, I had to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The day after my visit to the police station, I woke with a gnawing unease that clung to me like a shadow. The officer had promised to look into the letter and the phone number, but I couldn't just sit and wait. This was my daughter, my Emily. If she was in trouble, time mattered. I decided to retrace the trail myself. The return address scribbled on the envelope wasn't far. It was an apartment complex in a rougher part of town. My heart pounded as I drove there, my palms sweaty on the steering wheel. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. The building was old, bricks crumbling, windows smudged with years of neglect. The kind of place where people disappeared into anonymity. I hesitated outside, clutching the letter in my hand. What if Emily was inside? What if she needed me? I climbed the narrow stairwell to the listed apartment number and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. A door across the hall creaked open, and a woman with tired eyes peeked out. "You looking for someone?" she asked suspiciously. "Yes," I said quickly. "My daughter, Emily. I got a letter from this address." The woman shook her head. "Don't know an Emily. Some guy's been living there for a while. Keeps to himself mostly. A lot of people coming and going at odd hours, though. Not the kind you'd want your kid mixed up with." Her words sent a chill through me. I thanked her and left, my heart heavy. Whoever had written that letter, it wasn't my daughter. But the bigger question loomed. Why use Emily's name? I drove home, my mind spinning when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number flashed on the screen. Stop snooping. If you want to see Emily again, do as you're told. My hands trembled so badly I had to pull over. Fear clutched me, but anger soon followed. How dare they use my daughter's name as leverage? But what if Emily really was with them? That night, I barely ate. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the shoebox of Emily's old letters. Her bubbly handwriting danced across birthday cards and silly notes. That was my daughter, the girl who signed every note with a heart. The girl who made mistakes, yes, but who was fiercely independent. She wouldn't ask for money through strangers. Still, the text message burned in my mind. If you want to see Emily again... The next day, the police officer called me back. We traced the number, he said. It's a prepaid phone. Untraceable after purchase. The address you gave us? That unit has no one officially on the lease. Could be a squat, could be something else. Something else. I echoed. Could be criminal activity, he admitted cautiously. Ma'am, I need you to let us handle this. If someone is pretending to be your daughter, it could be part of a bigger scam. I agreed on the phone, but inside, I felt restless. The police had procedures, but procedures meant delays. I needed answers now. That afternoon, I drove to Emily's old college campus. Maybe someone there knew something. Maybe she had reached out to a friend. The campus felt different after all these years, buzzing with life. Students rushing to classes, laughter spilling from courtyards. It made me ache for the days when Emily was just a bright-eyed freshman, calling me every night to tell me about her professors and new friends. I found her old roommate, Sarah, still living nearby. She welcomed me in with a hug and a sad smile. I've wondered about Emily, she said softly. She just vanished. When I told her about the letter, Sarah's face darkened. That doesn't sound like her. But I'll tell you this. Toward the end, before she cut contact, Emily was hanging out with some guy. I didn't like him. Controlling, secretive, always picking her up in that beat-up black car. She wouldn't say much, just that I wouldn't understand. My heart clenched. Do you remember his name? Sarah frowned, thinking, I think it was Mark. Yeah, Mark. She met him off campus somewhere. She changed after that, stopped laughing as much, pulled away from me, and then one day she was gone. Mark, the name echoed in my mind. Could he be the man who answered the phone? Driving home, I felt my fears sharpening into determination. Whoever this Mark was, he was connected to Emily's disappearance. And if he thought he could scare me into silence with vague threats, he underestimated me. For 3 years, I had lived with the silence of not knowing. Now I had a name, and I intended to find him, no matter the risk. But as I pulled into my driveway, a small envelope tucked under my door caught my eye. My stomach dropped when I picked it up. Inside was a single photograph. Emily, older, thinner, her eyes hollow but unmistakably hers, sitting in a dingy room. On the back were 3 words scrawled in that same forced handwriting. Send money now. The photograph slipped from my shaking hands and landed on the kitchen floor. I stared at it, heart hammering so loudly it drowned out every other sound. Emily. My Emily. Her face looked thinner, her eyes hollow, but it was her. The little scar above her eyebrow, the one she got when she fell off her bike as a child, was there. I picked it up again and flipped it over. Send money now. The words were jagged, rushed, written in the same disguised hand from the letter. My throat tightened. If this was real, my daughter was alive but being held somewhere against her will. I sank into a chair, clutching the photograph, torn between hope and terror. For 3 years, I'd imagined she might be gone forever. Now I knew she was alive, but at what cost? The phone buzzed again. A new text from the same unknown number. $20,000. Cash. Instructions will follow. Don't involve the police, or you'll never see her again. Tears blurred my vision. $20,000. I didn't have that kind of money lying around. And even if I did, how could I be sure this wasn't just another cruel manipulation? I called Officer Daniels, my voice trembling as I told him about the photo and the new message. He listened carefully before speaking. "Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. This is starting to look like a kidnapping for ransom case. Do not respond yet. Let us set up surveillance. If you pay without proof of life, they could keep stringing you along." "But the picture," I whispered, "that's proof enough. Maybe, but it could also be staged. Please, trust me. We need to be careful." I wanted to scream at him. Careful? My daughter was sitting in some filthy room, maybe starving, maybe worse. And he wanted to be careful. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at Emily's photo under the dim light, whispering to it like she could hear me. "I'm coming for you, baby. Just hold on." By morning, the police had set up a trace on my phone. Daniels told me to act normal, to follow instructions, and they would be ready. But as the day passed, no new messages came. My nerves frayed with every hour. Finally, late in the evening, another text arrived. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. park bench by the fountain on 8th. Bring the cash. Alone." I read it over and over. A public place. A specific time. But I didn't have $20,000. I spent the night calling banks, looking at my savings, even considering pawning the few valuables I had. The most I could scrape together on short notice was $8,000. It wasn't enough. My hands shook as I stuffed the money into an envelope anyway. The next morning, I dressed in plain clothes and drove to the park early. Officer Daniels and his team were already there, disguised as joggers and dog walkers, their eyes scanning every corner. At exactly 10 a.m., I sat on the bench by the fountain, the envelope in my lap. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Every face that passed made me flinch. Then, a man in a hoodie approached. He didn't sit. He didn't even look at me directly. He just muttered, "Drop the money under the bench. Walk away." "Where's Emily?" I demanded, my voice cracking. He glanced at me, just for a second, and I caught it. The cold, watchful eyes. Not a stranger. The description Sarah had given me came rushing back. Mark. The man's jaw tightened. "Drop the money, or she suffers." I froze, torn between fury and fear. Behind me, I knew Daniels was watching, waiting for a signal. But if the police moved too soon, Emily could pay the price. Slowly, I slid the envelope under the bench. My hands shook so badly, the paper almost slipped from my fingers. Mark bent quickly, snatched it, and started to walk away. That's when 2 undercover officers sprang forward. Mark bolted, shoving past pedestrians. The envelope clutched tight. Chaos erupted. Shouts, people screaming, the fountain water spraying as he knocked someone into it. I stumbled to my feet, my heart in my throat. The officers chased him down the path, but Mark was fast. He darted into the street, weaving between cars. And then he was gone. My knees gave out, and I sank back onto the bench, shaking. The money was gone. The man who might have my daughter had slipped right through their fingers. Officer Daniels rushed over, his face tight with frustration. "We'll get him," he promised. But I barely heard him. My mind was on Emily. Somewhere out there, she was waiting. And now, Mark knew I had gone to police. I sat on that park bench long after Mark had vanished, the sound of the police radio chatter barely reaching me. My envelope, my money, was gone. And worse, he now knew I wasn't alone. If he had Emily, what would he do to her after realizing the police were involved? Officer Daniels crouched beside me, his voice calm but firm. "We'll get him, ma'am. Don't lose hope. He slipped this time, but we got enough to track him down." "Enough?" I whispered, my throat raw. "He has my daughter. What if he punishes her for this?" Daniel sighed. "That's the risk, but doing nothing was worse. We have eyewitness descriptions, partial surveillance footage, and his fingerprints might be on that envelope. He made mistakes." Mistakes. The word felt too small, too clinical, for the storm in my chest. My baby's life hung in the balance, and all I had were scraps of hope. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again, staring at Emily's photo, the silence pressing on me like a weight. Every creak in the house made me think of her crying out for me somewhere in the dark. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I had to stay strong. For her. The next day, Daniels called me into the station. They had pulled partial prints from the bench and the edge of the envelope. One of them matched a man already in the system, Mark Turner. My stomach dropped when I heard the name. Sarah's boyfriend. I gripped the edge of the table, so hard my knuckles went white. So Sarah was telling the truth all this time. Daniels nodded. He's a known offender. Petty crimes, but escalating in violence. We're now treating this as an active kidnapping case. The bad news? He knows we're onto him, which means he'll either try to cut off communication or force your hand faster. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A new message from that same number. You broke the rules. You'll pay for that. Next time, no games, or you'll never see her again. I showed it to Daniels, my hands trembling. He read it carefully, then looked me dead in the eye. He's rattled. That's good. Desperate men make sloppy choices, but it also makes him dangerous. The fear in my chest twisted tighter. That evening, Sarah came to see me. She stood awkwardly in the doorway, guilt written all over her face. Mrs. Walker, I heard what happened at the park. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have come forward sooner. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to shout at her for keeping this from me. But when I saw the tears streaming down her face, I couldn't. She was just a scared girl caught in Mark's web too. Sarah, I said softly, I don't care about blame. Right now, all that matters is finding Emily. If you know anything at all, you need to tell me. She nodded quickly, wiping her cheeks. There's this old warehouse on the edge of town. Mark used to take me there when he didn't want people to know we were together. It's abandoned, but he said it was the perfect hideout. I think he might have her there. My heart leapt and sank all at once. A lead. But if it was true, Emily was being held in some cold, crumbling building while I sat here helpless. I called Daniels immediately, giving him the address. He promised to send a team, but his warning echoed in my ears. We have to do this carefully. If we spook him, she could be moved or worse. The hours crawled by as I waited for updates. I paced the floor, clutched the photo, whispered prayers under my breath. Every passing second felt like a lifetime. Finally, near midnight, my phone rang. Daniel's voice was low and grim. We checked the warehouse. He was there. We found signs someone had been kept recently. Chains, food wrappers, a blanket. But they're gone now. He moved her. I sank to the floor, sobbing. We had been so close. Don't give up, Daniels urged. We're closing in. We'll find her. But his words fell hollow. The image of my daughter, shackled and terrified, haunted me, and the knowledge that Mark was always one step ahead gnawed at me like poison. As I curled up in the dark, clutching the photo to my chest, I made myself a promise. No matter how far he ran, no matter what it cost me, I would bring Emily home. And if Mark thought he could scare me into silence, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily chained in some filthy corner, her small hands trembling, her eyes wide with fear. By sunrise, I was running on coffee and sheer desperation. I wasn't waiting for the next call. Not anymore. I decided to dig. The warehouse clue had proved Sarah was telling the truth, but it also proved Mark was clever enough to keep moving Emily like a piece on a chessboard. If I wanted to get ahead of him, I needed to know why he was doing this. So I drove to the library, the one place that still had public archives of court records and small-town newspapers. It didn't take long to find Mark Turner's name scattered across arrest logs. Petty theft, trespassing, one assault charge. Nothing big enough to explain why he'd risk kidnapping. Then, in an old local paper, I saw something that made my stomach clench. Local man involved in paternity suit. The article was barely 3 paragraphs, but it mentioned Mark Turner and a young woman he had dated years ago. The case was dismissed, but my blood ran cold at the thought. Could he believe Emily was his? I carried the copy straight to Officer Daniels. He frowned as he skimmed it. It's thin, but if Mark believes he has some twisted claim to your daughter, that changes things. He's not just after money. He wants leverage, maybe even custody. Custody? I nearly shouted. He kidnapped her. Daniels raised his hand. I'm not defending him, but we need to understand his motive. If he thinks he's her father, or wants you to think it, he's going to play this like it's about more than ransom. The thought made me dizzy. Emily was mine. She had always been mine. There was no possible way Mark could be connected to her bloodline, was there? That night, I tore through old boxes of documents, birth certificates, hospital records, paternity tests, anything that might explain how Mark thought he had a claim. But I found nothing. At nearly 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Another message from him. You're digging in the wrong places. She's mine too, whether you like it or not. If you want to see her alive, meet me alone. No police. Tomorrow night, the river docks. My hands shook as I read it over and over. She's mine too. The next morning, I showed the message to Daniels. He scowled. It's bait. He wants to isolate you. He could be bluffing about any connection to Emily. Could be, I said bitterly. But what if he's not? What if there's something I don't know? Daniels gave me a steady look. Do you want us there undercover? Because going alone isn't an option. Not if you want to make it out alive. I hesitated. Every fiber of me wanted to see Emily with my own eyes. But every instinct screamed that if Mark had gone this far, he wasn't going to hand her back over a chat at the docks. I'll go, I said, but you stay close. I can't lose her, Daniels. Not now. That day dragged on endlessly. I tried to keep busy, but my mind circled around his words. She's mine too. It didn't add up. Unless someone in my past had lied to me. When evening came, Daniels wired me with a small microphone and positioned officers near the docks. The river smelled of rust and salt, the creak of old ships filling the silence. At exactly 9 p.m., Mark stepped out of the shadows. He looked taller than I remembered, leaner, his eyes sharp with feverish intensity. He carried a small duffel bag, but what froze my blood was a lock of blonde hair tied around his wrist like a bracelet. Emily's hair. You finally came, he said, grinning. Good, because it's time you face the truth. My heart thundered as I whispered, Where is she, Mark? He tilted his head, the grin widening. Safe. For now. But she belongs with me. And soon you'll understand why. From my earpiece, Daniel's voice urged me to stay calm. But my knees weakened at his next words. Ask your late husband, Claire. Ask him who really fathered your daughter. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Ask your late husband, Claire. Ask him who really fathered your daughter. I stared at Mark, the smell of the damp river air mixing with the metallic taste of panic in my mouth. My husband, David, had been gone for 6 years. He couldn't answer any of these accusations. But the way Mark said it, like he was savoring every word, made my hands tremble. You're lying. I snapped, though my voice wavered. David was Emily's father. There's no doubt. Mark smirked, stepping closer, his boots echoing on the cracked concrete. No doubt? You sure about that? Your precious husband. He had secrets, and one of them is standing right in front of you. My stomach churned. He couldn't mean. You! I whispered. He chuckled darkly. Bingo. For a second, the world tilted. The dock lights flickered, throwing jagged shadows across his face. His eyes were wild, but beneath the madness was something terrifyingly certain. You were nothing but a mistake. I said, my anger sparking to the fear. You're trying to rewrite history to justify what you've done. You kidnapped my daughter. Mark's grin faltered, replaced with a sneer. I rescued her from you, from the lies, from a family built on deception. David knew. He always knew. That's why he never looked me in the eye. He reached into the duffel bag, and my heart nearly stopped. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a stack of yellow papers. Court documents. Letters. My hands itched to grab them, but I held still, waiting. These, he said, waving them slightly. Prove everything. Proof that David tried to cut me out of her life. Proof that I'm not crazy. From my earpiece, Officer Daniels' voice crackled. Claire, keep him talking. Don't take the bait. I clenched my fists. Then show me. If you're so sure, let me see them. Mark's laugh echoed against the river. Not so fast. You don't get to see anything until Emily is back where she belongs, by my side. Where is she? I demanded, my voice sharp, trembling with rage. He tilted his head, eyes glinting. Close enough. Close enough that one wrong move from you or your friends in blue, and she disappears forever. The words chilled me. He knew. He knew the police were nearby. I forced myself to take a slow breath. Mark, listen to me. If you really believe you're a father, then this isn't the way. Hiding her, scaring her, what kind of father does that? For a brief second, something flickered in his eyes. Doubt? Regret? But then it hardened into stone. A desperate one, he hissed. One who's been robbed for too long. You think you're the victim here? No, you're just a thief who stole what was mine. And then, before I could react, he reached into the duffel again. This time, the glint of metal caught the light. A gun! Mark! I shouted, instinctively stepping back, my hands raised. From the shadows, I could almost feel the tension of officers taking aim. Daniel's voice crackled urgently in my ear. Stay calm. Don't move. We have him. But Mark wasn't aiming at me. He held the gun low, shaking, his voice cracking. I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want her back. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. Then, don't make another mistake. If you love her, even a fraction of what I do, don't let her last memory of you be this. The night seemed to hold its breath. The river lapped quietly against the dock. Mark's hand trembled. Finally, his shoulders sagged. He let out a guttural cry, dropping the papers and the gun at once. The sound of both hitting the ground made my knees weak with relief. Officers swarmed in, shouting, tackling him to the ground. He thrashed and screamed, but it was over. I stood frozen, staring at the mess of papers scattered across the dock. Daniels picked one up and handed it to me carefully. It was a faded copy of a court filing, Mark Turner versus David Harris. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. But beneath the chaos, one truth pulsed louder than anything. Emily was still out there, and Mark wasn't the only one who knew where she was. Because taped to the last page of the filing was a note, in fresh ink. She'll only come home when you prove whose blood runs in her veins. The sound of Mark being dragged away by officers still rang in my ears. His screams, half fury, half despair, echoed across the docks until they faded into the night. But I couldn't look at him. My eyes were glued to the note taped to the court papers, my fingers trembling as I held it. She'll only come home when you prove whose blood runs in her veins. It wasn't Mark's handwriting. His letters were jagged, desperate. This was neat, deliberate, and calm. Someone else had been orchestrating this. Claire, Officer Daniel said quietly, his hand steadying me. We've got him. He won't hurt anyone now. But this changes things. I nodded, forcing myself to breathe. This means Emily is still in danger. Whoever wrote this, they're still out there, and they want proof. Daniels frowned. Proof. A DNA test. The realization hit me like ice water. Whoever held Emily wasn't after money or revenge. They wanted confirmation, something about her bloodline. My thoughts tumbled back to Mark's accusations. David, secrets, lies. Could there really have been more to Emily's parentage than I ever knew? I shook my head violently. No, David was her father. He loved her. That's the truth. But even as I said it, doubt clawed at my chest. Back at the precinct, the interrogation room buzzed with Mark's angry outbursts. Through the glass, I watched him pound the table, veins bulging in his neck. You don't get it, he shouted at the detectives. She was mine. David stole her. Check the records. You'll see I'm not crazy. I turned away, unable to listen. Daniels handed me a small evidence bag. Inside was another folded sheet they'd found in Mark's duffel. I pulled it out and read the typed words. The truth has been buried long enough. Emily will come home when it's uncovered. Time is running out. No signature. No clue who sent it. I sank into a chair, clutching the note to my chest. My mind raced through possibilities. Who would know something like this? Who had access to both David's past and Mark's desperation? And then a name whispered itself in my thoughts. Margaret, David's mother, Emily's grandmother. She had always been cold toward me, even before David died. Whenever I brought Emily around, her eyes lingered on the child with something I could never quite name. Disappointment? Fear? Possessiveness? I grabbed my phone and scrolled through old emails, and there it was, buried in my inbox, a message from Margaret, sent months ago, long after she'd stopped speaking to me. You can't keep her forever. She deserves to know where she truly belongs. I felt the blood drain from my face. Daniels leaned over my shoulder, reading it. This could be our lead. Where's she now? She moved to a small town 2 hours north after David passed. I haven't seen her since, I said, my voice shaking. Within an hour, we were on the road. Every mile felt like a lifetime, my chest tight with both hope and dread. When we finally pulled up to Margaret's house, a weathered, 2-story place tucked behind tall hedges, my pulse was hammering. Lights glowed faintly from inside. The officers spread out cautiously. Daniels motioned for me to stay back, but I couldn't. I had to know. We knocked. The door creaked open. And there, standing in the dim hallway, was Margaret. Her silver hair was pulled into a tight bun, her eyes sharp as glass. Claire, she said coolly, as if she'd been expecting me. My voice cracked. Where is Emily? For a long moment, she studied me in silence. Then she stepped aside. She's here. My knees nearly gave out. I pushed past her, and there, sitting at the dining table, was my daughter, older, thinner, her eyes wary, but alive. Mom, Emily whispered. I rushed forward, tears spilling down my face as I wrapped her in my arms. Oh, my baby, I've been looking for you everywhere. But before relief could settle, Margaret's voice sliced through the air. She deserves to know the truth, Claire. She deserves to know that David was never her father. I froze. Emily stiffened in my arms, her wide eyes darting between us. What does she mean? Margaret's expression softened, almost pitying. It's time, Claire. You can't protect her from this forever. She deserves to know whose blood truly runs in her veins. The room spun. My daughter was home, but the truth that had been unearthed threatened to tear us apart all over again.